You're listening to the Fringe Radio Network at fringeradionetwork.com. If you'd like to be part of the Fringe Radio Network, check out our broadcast services on the menu at fringeradionetwork.com.
The Bruce Collins Show, daring to take radio past the point of no return. The new Theater of the Mind. The Bruce Collins Show.
In his new book, The World's Creepiest Places, Dr. Bob Curran travels to where ancient forces still hold sway, where people get that goosebumpy, chilly feeling up their spines. From European castles and tombs to the deserts of the Middle East, to the misty hills of Tibet, and to America, he encounters ghosts, sinister specters, vampires, the living dead, and doorways to other worlds. Known in Europe and beyond as a writer, lecturer, and broadcaster, Dr. Curran is a historian and psychologist who has written extensively on the arcane and the mysterious, from Celtic lore and Irish fairies to zombies and vampires. He chose a hair-raising collection of eerie delights for his new book, The World's Creepiest Places, and Tom Danheiser, producer of Coast to Coast AM, says, Dr. Bob Curran takes you to places that only your mind can create with his words and stories. From vampires to the undead to green men, Curran delights with the imagination. And we have Dr. Bob Curran all the way from the Emerald Isle. Dr. Curran, how are you doing?
How are you, Bruce? It's great to be on your show.
Well, it's great to have you on. Now, I have to ask you, what is it, do you think, that makes someplace creepy?
Well, Bruce, it's actually, and here I'm sort of speaking as a psychologist, it's actually a response, I think, to the surroundings which we see all around us. Sometimes we go into a place and there are associations with it. For instance, in the introduction to the book, I talk about an old creepy house near where I was born and raised, and it looked creepy. It really did. It was a massive old house, and it had got into wreck and ruin, and it really looked creepy. So people used to say, if that house isn't haunted, it should be haunted. So perhaps it's partly a response. Then there are places where something terrible has happened. And all these associations come in and your response. I have never been frightened by, let's say, ghosts. But I did have a very creepy response to a trip which I made to northern Germany, and we went to Belsen, the concentration camp. Now, the associations with that place triggered all sorts of responses within me because it was a ghastly place where people had been executed. So, and Nazi atrocities had taken place. So, that was another sort of response. Then you may get some sort of response to the area round about. Perhaps you think of, and I mentioned this in one of the books, can a person who is dead still cast a shadow over a place? And I mentioned a place called Warleggan out on Bodmin Moor, and there a very strange minister lived, the Reverend Frederick Densham, and his shadow the shadow of his presence, I should say, is still felt in the village sometimes today. So that is a response, and that's what gives us the sort of creepy tingling down the spine, in my view. It's a whole combination of things, Bruce.
I'm sure there are many, many creepy places around the world. How did you make your selections of places for this book?
Well, New Page, who are the publishers, came to me and they said to me, "It's time for a new book, Bob." So I said, "Okay, what will we do?" And they said, "Well, how would you like to do a thing on creepy places? If you were going on holidays and you were or recommending a holiday, where would you send people to go for a creepy experience?" And I came up with the question you have just asked me, what do you mean by creepy? Because it's a response, I think, what's creepy for one person will not be creepy for another. So, what I wanted to do was, firstly, from all over the world, because I could write about Ireland, creepy places. And that would simply be Irish creepy places. And I could write about America's creepy places. So I wanted to give a good geographical location. Then I wanted to not to write about ghosts or whatever, because that would be the world's most haunted places. So what I wanted to do was give a wide selection, and you have mentioned some of them, that there were ancient forces, that certainly ghosts played a part, that there may be vampires, and that there were places where one reality ended and another began. So that was another criteria. It was not simply ghosts and things like that. The third criteria I used was that there was a good story attached. There's no point in writing about a place saying, oh, this is very creepy. I'm not explaining why. And not telling a good story, because it would be a very short book. So those were the three criteria: the geographical location, a sort of broad spectrum of phenomena, and places with a good story. Now, having said that, Bruce, I could have filled another couple of books. So we had to say enough is enough, and we tried to get the best stories and the creepiest stories and put them into this book. There are Creepy Places 2 and Creepy Places 3 still sitting on my bookshelf.
So not all of these places are necessarily haunted or with ghosts, but when you come across a place that's really, really creepy and it's haunted, it appears to be haunted, and people hear ghosts, are we talking about ghosts? Are we talking about the demonic world, or could we be talking about a combination of the two?
Well, at the head of the show, you asked me what we meant by creepy, and I told you it was a response. Now, let me give you a couple of examples, because, and then I'll come back to your question, because the responses are very different for different people. I mentioned a place in the book called Leap Castle, or Let Castle, we call it here. And a while ago, I was down. I've been down there 2 or 3 times, but a little while ago, I was asked to go down there and speak to a group of Americans. It's an O'Carroll Castle, and the O'Carrolls are big in America. Charles O'Carroll signed the American Declaration of Independence. And there is a great connection. So from time to time they come back over for what we call a homecoming. And I was asked to come down and speak at one of these homecomings. And we went to Leap Castle, and there was a barbecue and all in front of the castle. And I was asked into the Great Hall to speak to. My wife, who was with me, would not set foot in the castle, because she felt a creepy atmosphere. And she sat out, it was a lovely night, so she sat out on the step and listened to me through the door. But she would literally not come in. I experienced nothing. Similarly, another little while ago, I did a radio program here in Northern Ireland, and we went to an abandoned prison. And we went down to the condemned cell. And you may know, Bruce, that the condemned cell is really 2 cells, because there's a cell where the prisoner comes in and the noose is placed around his or her neck. And the trap opens beneath them, and there's a cell in below it where the body falls into. And it's left hanging there for an hour before it's pronounced officially dead. Now, we talked about going into the lower cell. Now, we were there at night, and we talked about going into the lower cell, and we went down into the lower cell, and the presenter who was doing the show, he said, I'm going down there into the lower cell, and I'm taking a flashlight with me and see what it's like. So off he went. And he came back 2 minutes later, and he said, I can't stand that. He says, it's awfully creepy. I can't do that. And some of us were starting laughing, and he says to me, he says, Bob, would you do it? And I said, give me the light, Jerry. And I went into the lower cell, and it was the most comfortable place in the entire prison. In fact, I was there for half an hour, and I fell asleep. you're coming back to what makes what are ghosts, or how do they interact with us? Now, let me put it to you, Bruce, and here's a theory. Let's say you lose your temper, and you're really raging. You're furious. Now, you're generating energy, like a massive generator. Energy's building within you. Now, you're creating energy within yourself. Where does that energy go? Does it go out of your body and into the surrounding walls or place around you, into the surrounding environment? Mm-hmm. And could somebody, many years from now, be sensitive enough to respond to that energy and pick it up and experience what you experience, or even perhaps sense you or glimpse you, if you want? And the best way I can do it is talking about an old reel-to-reel tape recorder. Supposing you put something down on that tape, and somebody comes along later and presses a play button, and once again hears you or sees you or whatever. Could that be a ghost? And could that be what haunting is about? Haunting may be a personal response. Some people may see ghosts, and I have been with them, and I have no hesitation in believing them. I have no actual cause to doubt what they're telling me. Some of them are very reputable people, and they say they have seen ghosts or have seen something, and I have no cause whatsoever to doubt them. They're very sincere. But why can I not see that? Okay, or why can I not sense that? Maybe I respond very differently. And maybe I am not sensitive in the way that they are, that they can press the recording and see what's in front of them. So perhaps that is. And that's what gives us our feeling of foreboding. That's what gives us our feeling of creepiness, things like that.
Are there any places that you did not include in this book, but were creepy?
Oh, there were a whole number. There were places that I thought about. There are places away in the mountains of Germany, the Brockenenherz Mountains, and there are valleys up there. There are valleys in the Himalayas which are thought about of old tree worship. The Brockenenherz Mountains were the famous witch mountains in Germany. It was where the witches gathered. In the Himalayas, there are places where old gods are supposedly worshipped, old tree gods, and it could have written about records from the early days of the British Raj, which were. But what I want, as I say, there are in my files creepy places 2 and creepy places 3. But what I wanted to do was get a book out with some of the best stories in it. So yes, we can look at castles. There are a number of castles. There's Carrickfuka Castle in the south of Ireland, where a thing is supposed to live in a rock beneath where the castle is built. But I think that may come out very soon again, Bruce.
Mm-hmm. Now, you write about creepy places, and some of these places may be haunted. Do you think any of these places may be dangerous for people to visit?
If you'd asked me that question about a couple of years ago, I would have said no. But I am rapidly coming to the conclusion that there are places which I would hesitate to advise humans to go to. it's once again. So you asked me about some places not included in the book, and I heard of a valley in Norway in which people had went into and had come out, and they had been radically changed, and that means that their mental state had been changed. Some of them were in homes or mental asylums, and because of the family connections, I couldn't include them in the book. But I genuinely think, and I'm rapidly coming to the conclusion the more I researched into this, that there are places which could be dangerous. Not dangerous, perhaps, in a merely physical sense, although that could happen. But places which are dangerous in a mental sense, or almost a spiritual sense, which can cause depression, which can cause a sort of mental debility or something like that. And yes, I think there are places where people really shouldn't think about going.
Now, Dr. Bob Curran, again, your book is The World's Creepiest Places. I want to touch on some of these, but there's so many that people really need to get the book. Again, the title is The World's Creepiest Places by Dr. Bob Curran. Great book. And just, even though this broadcast is going out to the listeners in Nashua, New Hampshire, I live in Northern California, and for about 15 years I lived 1 block away from a place called the Winchester Mystery House. This is quite a creepy place, isn't it?
You were a lucky man. You were a block away from it. Yeah. Yes, this is a house, and whenever I lived in your part of the world, it was owned, I think, by the state. I'm not sure whether it's still owned by that. But this is the house which was built by Sarah Winchester. Now, as soon as I mention the name Winchester, you will automatically think of the rifle. And that is the actual connection. Now, because the man who developed the Winchester rifle was Oliver Winchester, who was Sarah's husband. And he died, as did Sarah's daughter. Sarah's daughter died at a very young age, and her husband was not long after that. Now, Sarah, through various contacts, became convinced that the death of her husband and her child and some bad fortune that had happened to her was due to people who had been killed by the Winchester rifle, their spirits. She became very interested in spiritualism, as you might expect, and she traveled to San Jose in California. She was advised by a medium to travel into the West, which she did. Now, as you would expect, she was a multimillionaire. The Winchester rifle had sold tremendously well. Largely, it came out at the start or shortly before the American Civil War, which aided to its circulation. So it had made Oliver and Sarah Winchester incredibly wealthy. And she came on to, whenever she arrived in San Jose, California, she came upon a house which was being built by a Dr. Caldwell, who had a family, a large family, had 6 children. And he was building a house to accommodate them, a large house. So Sarah paid him the money and took over the building of the house for herself. And she built, and she built, and she built. And her rationale was that she was building rooms for the spirits of those who had been killed by the Winchester rifle, of which there were thousands upon thousands, especially during the Civil War. And she kept building and adding to the house. Now, even today, Bruce, as you may know, nobody knows how many rooms are in the house. Because Sarah kept on adding. She kept on adding corridors. She kept on adding staircases. The corridors doubled back on themselves, and the staircases went nowhere. There are corridors which simply stop. There are lift shafts which have no lifts. And there are nobody knows how many rooms there are. In the end, nobody actually knew where in the house Sarah lived. They came upon several bedrooms that she might have used, and they found bits and pieces. After she was dead, some of her relatives, imagining that there was a fortune hidden in the house, tried to go through it, and several of them got lost in it, because there are hundreds of rooms in it. In fact, whenever Sarah died, in 1922, she died at the age actually of 83, and she had been building the house for most of her life. Because she was so incredibly wealthy, money was not a problem to her. So you get the house with all these rooms, with false windows, with chimneys which have no fireplaces, and for corridors which end up nowhere. The strangest thing is that there are no mirrors in the house. This came about because of a belief on Sarah's part that spirits would become trapped within the glass and would come out of the glass and torment her. When she had died, they began to clear out some of her effects. Now, the removal men, it is said, some of the removal men got lost for 2 days within the house because of the winding corridors and passageways and staircases which went back on themselves. Not even the great San Francisco earthquake deterred her. It knocked. That was in 1906, of course. It had knocked part of the house down, but she simply started again and rebuilt. When she died in 1922, at the age of 83, it was found she was close to bankruptcy. Most of her money had gone into building the house. The house was actually taken over very briefly by a gentleman called Robert Leroy Ripley. Now, you will know him because of Ripley's Believe It or Not, which appeared in some of the papers. So he took some stuff out of the house, and he exhibited it in his auditorium, Odditorium, in Hollywood, which became a great tourist attraction. And but the house is still there. You can verify that because you have lived a block away from it.
Yes, and if people are visiting the Northern California area, they can go on tour. They can tour the entire house and see staircases that go up to ceilings and doors that open up into walls. It's a very creepy
absolutely.
place.
And corridors which double back on themselves.
Yes. And oddly enough, it's next to a movie theater now that shows vampire and zombie movies once in a while.
Maybe there's a connection there.
Yeah, there you go. And by the way, I want to give credit where credit is due. The the gentleman or lady who illustrated this book did an exceptional job.
That's Ian Daniels. Ian lives in Hastings in England. I have done roughly about 13 books for New Page. Ian has worked with me on all but one. And Ian, over the years, Ian and I have built up a relationship. And he will ring me or I'll say there's a new book coming out, Ian. Give me a ring, and he will ring me and we'll discuss what we want. And he sends me down illustrations and says, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And in all the time, Bruce, that I have known him, I have never had to write back to him and say, Ian, I don't like this. His stuff is excellent and complements the scary stuff well.
Yeah, it does. Again, the book is The World's Creepiest Places by Dr. Bob Curran. Its publisher is New Pages, so check it out. Now, one of the places that is listed here, I imagine cemeteries are quite creepy, and one of the topics in your book is Capuchin Cemetery in Palermo, Sicily. Can you tell us?
No, that truly is a creepy place. It started out as an old monastic sort of cemetery. And it's based around the notion of catacombs. Now, these are sort of underground tombs where the dead can be laid to rest, pretty much as they were in life. In a number of ancient beliefs, death was not really the end. Today we think of death as the end of involvement in our world. And this is how people are laid to rest, and that's the end of it. That was not the case among a number of ancient cultures. For example, the Celts believed that the other world, the people could sit and watch what was going on in this world from the other world, and from time to time might intervene. And I suppose that's where we get the idea of ghosts and stuff and things like that. Now, in Palermo, they believed that perhaps the dead could get up and walk about for a while. And so they set them pretty much as they had been in life. Now, that means that in many respects, or in most cases, they are not coffined. They sit on chairs, they sit as if they are alive. You get a group of them sitting in a corner as if gossiping. You get people sitting on long sofas. It started out, first of all, simply for the monks in the Capuchin friary. The monk, you will get exactly the same sort of thing in the catacombs in Rome, where some of the ancient bishops have been set up. And so the monks were sitting on their seats, ready to be called whenever the last great trumpet sounded, and they could get up and walk out and meet with God. So they're all sitting about as if some of them actually are sitting at tables with moldy bread in front of them, as if they're actually having a meal. And it is you're walking along corridors which bodies have been set into niches in the walls. So most of these are all skeletons. The flesh has faded away, but they're all sitting in gloomy alcoves. Some of them are lying in glass coffins lit by candles. because it's dark. You're underground. And the corridors themselves are very labyrinthine. They wind backwards and forwards a bit like the Winchester Mystery House. And so it is possible to get slightly lost in there. And if you're walking through the catacombs when the light is poor and there's lamps burning in niches on the walls, it can be very macabre and very creepy indeed. And it is not something, Bruce, that I would advise you to do alone.
Yeah. Wow. The world's creepiest places. Now, Dr. Curran, one more of these. Loftus Hall in Waxford, Ireland.
That is the famous Dr. Thomas, or Father Thomas Brothers. The great Irish, one of the great Irish exorcists. Loftus Hall is a very creepy old place. It sits alone on the Hook Headland in County Wexford. And it is, as they say in that part of the world, a big barrack of a house. It's an imposing structure. And it was originally built for the Redmond family who owned the Hook Peninsula. But it later on became the property of the Tottenham family, Sir Charles Tottenham, who made various modifications to it. But it is one of the ancient devil stories of the area, and I suppose all over Ireland, because it is said that the devil visited Loftus Hall. The seas around the area were very bad for shipping, and there were numerous wrecks. And it is said that one night there was a wreck on the coast beneath the hall, and that a young man came to the door, claiming to be a survivor of the wreck. And he was brought in and given wine and looked after, and they decided to pass away such a stormy night, they would have a game of cards. Now, the young lady of the house, Charles Tottenham's daughter, was greatly attracted to the young man, and she and he played the cards together. And in the course of the game, she dropped her cards and stooped down to lift them, and she saw his feet. They were not the feet of a human. It was a cloven hoof of a brute beast, which was the mark of the devil. She jumped up and revealed this, and at which point the young man revealed that he was the devil. And he disappeared up the chimney, because he'd been sitting at the fire, in a great clap of thunder and smoke. But it was said that the devil tormented the hall as in a kind of poltergeist way, and did all sorts of things, and his presence was still felt. And Sir Charles Tottenham went to a priest who lived on his estate, Father Thomas Brothers, who was brought to the hall and exorcised the demon who was in there. And when Father Thomas died in 1773, he was laid to rest in Horetown Cemetery, which is not all that far from Loftus Hall. And it said, "Here lies the body of Thomas Brothers, who did much good and prayed for all, and banished the devil from Loftus Hall." I think, now, whenever I was writing this, there was supposed to be a film. I was writing this in 2010, and there was supposed to be a film being made, which would star Samantha Mumba, who appeared in the remake of The Time Machine. And it was said that it was to be released about 2011, 2012. And it was supposed to be a horror film based on events at the Hall. But so far I haven't seen anything about it. It was, however, I will tell you, Bruce, that Loftus Hall is still on the market. It is up again for sale, and they're asking €1 million. So if you want to buy a house where the devil has sat, you ring up and find out if you can still buy it.
Wow. That's creepy. Now, Dr. Curran, Bob, one of the things that I think about, this is a little bit off topic, but one of the things I think about when I think about Ireland are leprechauns and banshees. Do people still see these beings today?
Well, no, if you could see me, Bruce, you would could see the grey in my beard, and you would know that I wasn't born yesterday, if I can use that. I was brought up, and people ask me why I write about these things. I was brought up in a very remote area of County Down, which was a mountain area, and people believed very strongly in banshees and fairies and what was called the puka. The puka was a sort of a demon or a goblin, which appeared actually at this time of the year, at the end of the harvest. So, however, I think, and that was, dare I say, Bruce, in the 1940s and the 1950s, and it was very strong then. It is not, I suspect, as strong now, although people still believe in the supernatural, I would think. Our sort of emphasis has changed, and we are now into technology and things like that. And we're in mobile phones and iPhones and iPads and stuff like that. But I think certainly here in Ireland, I don't know, I haven't been to America for a while, but certainly here in Ireland, there is still an underlying belief. You will travel through the countryside and you will see lone trees and old earthworks. Now, the lone trees are known in this part of the world where I'm speaking to you as skeiths. And you keep seeing these growing all by themselves in the middle of a field, and people have ploughed around them or worked around them. And you say, well, why don't you cut them down? And they say, oh, we won't cut them down because those are fairy trees. There are fairies still attached to them, and if we cut them down, something terrible will happen to us. I was brought in, Bruce, several years ago by a guy who was high up in the school inspection service. You may know that I worked as a teacher. And I was very friendly with this guy. And he said, Bobby says, could I ask you a question? He says, I have just bought a new house, and I'm moving in. He says, but at the end of my garden, there is a bush growing, and I'm terribly afraid to cut it, in case it is a fairy thorn. And I said, well, he says, do you think I should cut it down? And I said, well, look, it's up to yourself. But I said I would be hesitant to cut it down. And so he didn't. And I went and saw him, several months ago, and the bush is still there. So there is an underlying perception that there are still supernatural elements about. Maybe less so than whenever I was growing up, because then you couldn't go into fields. There were certain fields around where my grandmother lived, and you couldn't go into them without saying, by your leave, or good day, because all through the fields were fairy paths where the fairies were supposed to pass about invisibly. And if you walked across it without their permission, something terribly bad would happen to you. Similarly, not too far from where my grandmother lived was what was known as a caldriche. Now, you may not know what that is. It's a place which has been set aside for the burying of unbaptized infants and for the burying of suicides, which the church will not bury. And that had been land given over, let's say, by a local farmer for the burial of that. Now, you would not cross that area. Some people used it as a shortcut. You would not cross that area as soon as the sun started to go down, because the souls of the unbaptized infants or the suicides were still there and were still looking for a way back into the world and might possess you if you crossed that. Now, I was down where my grandmother was brought up about a year ago. I have long since moved away, but I was down there, and the place is still there. And people still talk about it, and people will still not cross it after 6 o'clock at night. So I suspect that deep beneath our psyche, there's still something which acknowledges the supernatural, Bruce.
The World's Creepiest Places, Dr. Bob Curran. This is a great book. And I need to ask you before you go, are you currently working on anything? Is there another creepy book in the works?
There are a number of creepy books, Bruce. In fact, at the minute, I'm trying to write 2 books simultaneously. One's almost complete. One is A Haunted Mind. And that is looking at the work of the author H.P. Lovecraft. And looking to see Lovecraft is enjoying something of a renaissance at the moment, with all the Hulu mythos and things like that. And what I'm trying to determine is there any, where did his sources come from? Is there anything in that? And there are, for instance, he looks like the Necronomicon and things like that. Is there anything in that? So beginning to look at that and think of where his sources might have come from, and are there deeper things in the world that we currently suspect? That's one book. The second book is American Vampires. And that's looking at the notion of vampires almost, I'm hesitant to say on a state-by-state basis because it's not, but by cultural block. We're looking at things in New York State. The vampires are all very, very different. In New York State, the vampire is a shadow on the floor. And that's in Checkney, New York. And we look at that from the viewpoint of Dutch vampires, and because New York was originally New Amsterdam. We're looking at Boo Daddies, which appear in South Carolina, and that comes from the Gullah slaves who were there. We're looking at New England, the conventional, very early ones. And if I were to say to you, what is the vampire capital of America? You might turn around and say San Francisco, New Orleans, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not. It is probably Rhode Island. Wow. And Exeter, around Exeter. In Rhode Island, because you have the vampire lady. So we're looking at those sort of things. And even in Tennessee, we're looking at a vampire chair. So, Bruce, look at what you're sitting on.
Yeah.
So we have vampire chairs, vampire wells, vampire ladies in Dogtown, places like that.
Well, I would be honored, and I know my audience would be honored to have you back sometime. Before you go, are you anywhere on the internet where folks could?
I am. Yeah. Firstly, Bruce, I would be delighted and honored to come back.
Great.
So stay in touch, and whenever the books come out, we'll do another one.
Okay.
If that's all right with you.
That is.
In answer to your second question, yes, I have a blog, and just look me up under Dr. Bob Curran blog. You'll get a couple of blogs because I also do comics. And we have a thing called Bog Standard Comics as well. But there's a thing called Dr. Bob, and you'll read about me and what I'm thinking and what I'm doing and all sorts of things.
The World's Creepiest Places, and this is a creepy book by Dr. Bob Curran. Thank you so much, Dr. Bob.
You're more than welcome, Bruce, and we'll maybe talk again sometime.
You're listening to the Fringe Radio Network at fringeradionetwork.com. If you'd like to be part of the Fringe Radio Network, check out our broadcast services on the menu at fringeradionetwork.com.
The following conversation is real. It took place on Tuesday, June 8th of 2004 between a Blonde Star advisor and a subscriber.
Blonde Star, emergency. This is Steve. Is there an emergency in your vehicle?
I've locked myself in my car, and the keys are on the outside.
Ma'am,
oh, my God.
Ma'am, I need you to calm down.
Okay, it's just that the windows are rolled up, and I'm starting to sweat. My keys are on the outside.
Now, your keys are on the outside of the vehicle?
Yes.
Now, does your car have automatic locks, or...
Yes.
Okay, here's what I need you to do. Take hold of the inside of your door handle there. Are you doing this? The shiny thing. Grab the shiny thing.
Okay, I've got it.
Okay, now give that a tug.
Okay.
Did it open?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, now what is that noise?
Oh, that's my door alarm.
Yeah, but that only happens if the keys are in the ignition, hon.
You know what?
Your keys are actually in your ignition.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Blonde Star.
That's why we're here. Do you need anything else?
Blonde Star.
No, that's
Always
it.
on, because you're always blonde.
Well, that was creepy. Have you been creeped out by me personally? I hope not. Hey, this is the part of the show where I talk to you about Fringe Radio Network. Have you heard about Fringe Radio Network? Well, the Bruce Collins Show is part of Fringe Radio Network, and you can find out all the great shows that are part of the Fringe at fringeradionetwork.com. Whether we're talking about the Grayling Report with Micah Hanks, The Iron Show with John McMahon, Through a Glass Darkly with Paul and Philip Collins, Ralph Epperson University, and Conspiria with Chad Miles, we are talking about a very powerful radio network known as the Fringe Radio Network. Again, you can find out all about Fringe Radio Network at fringeradionetwork.com. And you can subscribe to the Fringe Radio Network on iTunes. And once a month on the Fringe Radio Network, we will have the Big Finale live program, where we will have great guests, stimulating talk, and where you can call in and participate in the program. Again, that's the Big Finale. Go to fringeradionetwork.com and you'll see all the upcoming programs. And speaking of the Bruce Collins Show, Upcoming guests include David Lowe, the author of the new book, Deconstructing Lucifer, and Mac Maloney, who has written a very interesting book, UFOs in Wartime, where he talks about the UFO sightings that have gone on in past wars. Thank you so much for inviting us into your homes, your cars, and most of all, your ears and your hearts. This is our last day on WSMN. It's been a real honor to be here. You can catch future programs, as I've been saying, of the Bruce Collins Show on FringeRadioNetwork.com. Google Fringe Radio Network or Google The Bruce Collins Show. You'll find us there at FringeRadioNetwork.com. Again, thank you so much for listening. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Waiting for some kind of sign from above, lost in the shadows of doubt.